I love, but I think he's too much like Brad Stevens.
I like.
I was going to say
really.
I was just
no.
going
I
to
was.
say
This Connor says, serious question. Switch Eric Spoelstra and Brad at the beginning of the year. Is our record better? He says, unfortunately, I think so. What are you guys thinking? I think Spoelstra's like he's the only coach that seemingly outlasted LeBron. Like I really think Spoelstra is a real, and as highly rated as he is, I still think he's an underrated coach. I do think that they're a better team under Spoelstra. But at the same time, that is banking on, which I definitely have said and do believe that a lot of this blame goes on the coach. If it isn't on the coach and you switch out the coach and it's really a Jason Tatum or a Jaylen Brown or a Marcus Smart problem, then I don't think so. But I believe that a lot of this blame, it falls on the coach. So I do think Spoelstra leads them to a better year. I don't know if they become a champ. I don't know if it's day and night. All of a sudden you're a championship caliber team because everyone deserves some blame here. But I think you definitely are a better team with Spoelstra over Stevens, and I think we've seen that in the last playoff series, and then these games this year outside of the one that the Celtics ended up winning. Like Brad Stevens just getting outcoached by Spoelstra.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because Spoelstra, I think, is a good coach. I agree with you. It's just I look at him compared to Stevens, and it's like I don't really think coaching was the problem this year. Like there's certainly
that's where we differ. I think it's got to start somewhere, and I think.
So what do you think Spoelstra does that's different from
is involved in the game, engaged in the game? I don't think Brad Stevens is whatsoever. Spoelstra's in the game, and to use a quote like Nick Nurse, he considers the coach just as much of a player as the players are out there. And I think Brad Stevens, every time you look at him, he's sitting there legs crossed, arm crossed on the sidelines. And I think that the players maybe are tuning that out and they're past that. That's good if you're this mastermind that's cooking up the schemes, but all of a sudden those schemes aren't working, these plays aren't working, the team's not looking good. You can't sit there with your arms crossed and looking at your iPad to see what's going on across the league. Spoelstra's involved in the game, he's in the game, he's intense with his players, he's up and down the sidelines. That's literally a cut and dry black and white difference between those two coaches.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about coaching and whether it's the right thing to do to fire Brad Stevens because he's such a good coach. And I think about I was thinking about this the last few days. And these are different sports, so it doesn't always track. But when the Yankees were at the top of their dynasty, like they fired coaches left and right. Like there was jokes about how often George Steinbrenner fired managers. Like he fired a manager every year. It felt like I think it was like something like. I don't know, and he had like 24 managers in 17 years or some crazy stupid number. Like so, and you look at the Celtics back when they were winning in the 80s with Larry Bird, they fired coaches a bunch too. They brought in new guys all the time, and even you look at recently, like the Lakers are doing this thing. They fire their coach. They bring in Frank Vogel. Frank Vogel was he was okay. He was pretty good with the Pacers, but they bring him in. And now, if they don't win this year, they might fire him. And if you have Ty Lue, you had David Blatt with the Cavaliers, they fire him. They bring in Ty Lue, they start winning.
It's happened so many times, over and over again, and people get over it. If people truly think that if they get rid of Brad Stevens, and I'm probably I keep giving a barometer on the post game show of where I am. I'm probably at I think I said last game 88% kind of on board. I'm not fully there yet, but I don't think people understand how quickly you would get over that. They would get over you as much. Brad Stevens could go on and succeed elsewhere. I get it. Celtics fans would get over him not being the coach anymore.
And for the most part, even after you get rid of a coach, good teams are still good. Like, and I think when I don't know when. Hold on, let me look this up real quick because another analogy I was going to use.
Wongy wants a womp womp. He's going to get a womp womp. If there's anyone that can request anything, it's Wongy.
By the way, where coaching is actually really important is football. And I think that Bruce Arians is a good coach. But Brad Stevens, Tom Brady leaves Bill Belichick and goes to win with Bruce Arians, and he wins the Super Bowl with Bruce Arians. Did it matter who his coach was? Like, you just change the coaches. It's about the players and whether the players like the coach, a lot of it. So whether your best players like the coach. And so, like I said, good teams, if your team is good and you fire a good coach and you bring in someone else, the team's usually still good. Like, think about Pat Riley. We're talking about Pat Riley, the Miami Heat, all this great stuff about him. They get rid of Pat Riley. They have Eric Spoelstra coach the team. They're still pretty good. And the analogy I was really going to bring up was in 1990, Pat Riley was the coach of the Lakers. Okay, he leaves the Lakers, go to the Knicks. The great Pat Riley leaves the Lakers, goes to the Knicks. The Lakers are in the finals the next year against Michael Jordan. So, like, what are we talking about here? Coaching, people change coaches all the time, and changing coaches is, if anything, it's healthy to get a new voice in there. Think about this. Think about it this way. You have a teacher in school. Do you think one teacher could teach you everything you need to know about everything as far as schooling? You get different teachers every year so you can learn new things, get a different perspective, and develop yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that would work with the Celtics and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown too.
Yeah, I mean, it's if there's one guaranteed way to take this team and go and shake them up, it's way easier to fire the coach and get a new one than it is to trade Jaylen Brown or trade Jason Tatum and blow it up, or even go and get another GM. I know a lot of this blame can fall on Danny Ainge too. It's pretty damn tough to fire your GM and then go find a GM. Finding a new coach, it's probably the easiest route, and it might do the most shaking up, which this team could definitely do. But I think we are going to start closing up. So any last sort of big points here?
As long as it's not Kendrick Perkins, I'm fine.
Yeah, that's the name. That's just, it's not.
Like, don't give me Kendrick Perkins. Don't give me Paul Pierce. Like, that's not who I want the coaches to be, okay? If anything, try to talk Rondo into retirement. Like, that's the former Celtic I'll take. If you want to talk Rondo into retirement, make him the coach. Like, I'll listen to that theory. But it's interesting because I understand that it's good to have infrastructure and it's good to have, like, think what the Spurs have had. I think that's what the Celtics want to emulate here is, like, R.C. Buford, Greg Popovich. We want to have that, that's standing. But even that, Tim Duncan was there for a long time, and it worked with Tim Duncan there and all those guys. Is Greg Popovich, like, the best coach in the NBA, regarded as the best coach in the NBA? What is he doing right now? Like, is he making a huge difference for the Spurs, who have an all-star caliber player in DeMar DeRozan, have a pretty good player in DeJounte Murray? Like, if you took Greg Popovich out of there and put in another coach, would they be all that much worse? Would they be that much worse? And look, I'm not saying they would be better if you brought in someone else besides Popovich, but what I am saying is, if that's how much Popovich can do for a Spurs team with, limited talent but still some talent, then all these other coaches in the league, like, what are they doing for their teams? Chauncey Billups is, an interesting one. I like to see him. I think more of an executive than anything. You know who could be an interesting one? Another Kenny Atkinson. I love, but I think he's too much like Brad Stevens.
I like Sam Cassell.
I was going to say Sam
no
Cassell.
Way, really?
I was just going to say Sam Cassell.
No, I mean, unless I see it in your forehead through your head. No, I think that's assistant coach under.
Actually, Doc.
Yeah, could work really well.
Yeah, you bring us in Cassell, played in the city for a little bit, was he on the champ? I'm trying to think. I think he was the year after. I don't think he was on the championship team. But either way, Sam Cassell, played with Kevin Garnett too, played with a lot of good players, and has been around for a long time. Has been, by the way, an assistant for a long time. Many years now as an assistant under Doc. So you bring Sam Cassell in, like, I think that's a guy that could be a very good coach. Now, like, I don't know for 100% because Sam Cassell, to me, a little more soft-spoken than you don't really like he's not really going to get into his
you might be getting what you have, but I'm still willing to at least bank on the hope and chance of it shakes things up.
Well, he's a little bit more like Ty Lue, I would say. Like, not really going to get in anybody's face, scream at them. Like, he's not exactly like Doc. He's a little different. I'm sure he picked up a lot of his coaching traits, but he's not like a fiery guy. Right. It's like, he's more like Ty Lue. He might, but I think it's definitely a change of pace, because I think people talk about this all the time, is the kind of basketball expert versus the true former player. You got your Krzyzewskis, you got your Brad Stevenses, you got, that kind of grouping of type of coaches. And then you got your Docs and you got your Sam Cassells and you got, the Jason Kidds, even if you want to throw him in there, the former player archetype. So that's really what I think. And Jason Kidd, another name you could throw there. I think I prefer Sam Cassell, but Jason Kidd, another good candidate for you if you want to go the former player route. Because if you really want to switch it up, that's what we're talking about. Former player. Jerry Sacco's another good name, too.
They would speak. A former player would speak to these guys.
Yeah. Just not Paul Pierce or Kendrick Perkins, because there's a difference between being a former player and being a former player who can coach, okay? Mm-hmm. And I don't think Paul Pierce and Kendrick Perkins are former players who can or want to coach. And if they might want to, but they wouldn't be good at it. Both Paul Pierce and Kendrick Perkins, they are, how should I say this nicely? Somewhat unreliable at times. A little bit all over the place, which is fine for a player to be that way. But your coach needs to be a little bit more focused than I think those guys are typically.
Kale's saying, I would take KG in a heartbeat as an assistant, but I think KG's on to bigger and better things
If anything,
in life. But I love that.
KG's in the media. KG's fine in the media. But you know what's good? You know what's an interesting point? You bring in Sam Cassell, very good friends with KG. Like, part of the reason Sam Cassell came to the Celtics in the first place was because he played with KG in Minnesota, and then KG wanted him in Boston with them. By the way, Sam Cassell also played with Hakeem Olajuwon. Like, Sam Cassell's been with a lot of great players, and he's been around in the NBA for a long time. So anyway, that was all to say. You bring in Sam Cassell, then all of a sudden you have a direct pipeline to KG. Like, Sam Cassell can bring KG into practice whenever he wants. Doesn't have to be an assistant. He can just call him up and be like, "Hey KG, come down here and watch practice with me with these guys for a little bit." KG comes down. Jason Tatum is the defensive rotation, and KG's not having that. KG's gonna say something about it. KG is a very, very vocal guy. So
yeah.
I don't know about the assistant, but a friend of the coach, like, that's a benefit.
We're seeing some, this would never happen, but Ubi saying get IT as the coach, player coach in IT, and then Donovan says seeing IT chew people out of his height would be entertaining.